Application forms for sharing accommodations must be completed 2 months in advance.
Hello, testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2. Miss Pramod, and I'm very happy to give this test today. I'm giving this test for my practice. Yellow is considered as the most optimistic color, yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hardest color for eyes to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused. Yellow is considered as the most optimistic color, yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hardest color for eyes to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused. In the fast changing world of modern healthcare, the job of a doctor is more and more like the job of a chief executive. The people who run hospitals and physicians practices don't just need to know medicine, they must also be able to balance budgets, motivate a large and a diverse staff, and make difficult marketing and legal decisions. The fast In the fast changing world of modern healthcare, the job of a doctor is more and more like the job of a chief executive. The people who run hospitals and physicians' practices just don't need to know medicine. They must be able to balance budgets, motivate a large and diverse staff, and make difficult marketing and legal decisions. Analyst were impressed. Analysts were impressed by the improvement in margins reported across all regions, apart from the United Kingdom, and said that this reflected a clear effort to improve profitability across the business, although the turnaround is still in its early stages and the valuation looks full given the challenge of turning around such a large and complex business. This is certainly an immersive start. The tsunamis could provide crucial information about the habitability of ancient Mars. The first one occurred when the planet must have been relatively warm and amenable for life because it carved out backwash channels as it returned to the sea. By contrast, the planet had become much cooler by the time the second tsunami hit. The tsunamis could provide crucial information about the habitability of ancient Mars. The first one occurred when the planet must have been relatively warm and amenable for life because it carved out backwash channels as it returned to the sea. By contrast, the planet had become much cooler by the time The second tsunami hit. Historically, what has happened used to estimate bats has been photographic estimates, visual estimates, mark recapture estimates, and those have been highly prone to bias. Newer technology like thermal imaging cameras is accurate but expensive. So, at a time of epic bat mortality due to, for example, the fungal white nose syndrome that's wiping out bats in Canada and the US. Historically, what has been used to estimate bats has been photographic estimates, visual estimates, mark recapture estimates, and those have been highly prone to bias. Newer technology like thermal imaging cameras is accurate but expensive. So, at a time of epic bat mortality due to, for example, the fungal white nose syndrome that's wiping out bats in Canada and the US. The uniquely scented flavor of vanilla is second only to chocolate in popularity on the world's plate. It's also the second most expensive spice after saffron, but highly labor-intensive cultivation methods and the planet's temperamental life cycle and propagation mean production on a global scale is struggling to keep up with the increasing demand for the product. The uniquely scented flavor of vanilla is second only to chocolate in popularity on the world's plate. It's also the second most expensive spice after saffron, but highly labor-intensive cultivation methods and the planet's temperamental life cycle and propagation mean production on a global scale is struggling to keep up with the increasing demand for the product. The shuttle was designed to be a space truck. It's a multi-purpose vehicle. We have done a tremendous number of different things with it. It's the most versatile space vehicle that has ever been built. We have used it to launch satellites. We have used it to repair satellites in orbit and put them back into orbit. We have used it to capture satellites and bring them back off Earth for repair. For repair, repair, repair. The shuttle was designed to be a space truck. It's a multi-purpose vehicle. We have done a tremendous number of different things with it. It's the most versatile space vehicle that has ever been built. We have used it to launch satellites. We have used it to repair satellites in orbit and put them back into orbit. We have used it to capture satellites and bring them back to Earth for repair.
Politicians and marketing professionals have a good understanding of persuasion.
Professional and mathematician professional have a good understanding of politics. Thank you very much.
Enrollment in classes is supposed to be completed via the university record system.
Enrollment in classes supposed to be completed via university portal.
The results of the study underscored the discoveries from early detection.
The result of the study underscores result from the underground. Thank you very much.
To understand its entity, we need to go back to its origin.
To understand its entity, we need to go back to its origin.
Your tutor is there to help, so do ask if you don't understand anything.
Your tutor is there to help, so do you ask to help him if you have anything issue.
A thorough bibliography is needed at the end of every assignment.
A thorough bibliography is needed at the end of every assessment.
Please read the first 5 chapters to prepare for next week's tutorial.
Please read the first 5 chapters to prepare for next week tutorial.
Some young people seem to be addicted to their cell phones.
Some young people seem to be addicted to their cell phones.
People tend to be least happy in middle age.
People tend to be less happy in middle age.
There won't be any space for me in the car.
There won't be any space for me in the car.
Professor Gordon just called me a few minutes ago.
Professor Gordon just called me a few minutes ago. The image gives information about percentage of hotel revenue by class. The image gives information about percentage of hotel revenues by class. The primary feature of the image is luxury. Firstly, it shows data about hotels and rooms. Furthermore, it conveys information about upper class. The image gives information about percentage of hotel revenues by class. The primary feature of the image is luxury. Firstly, it shows data about hotels and rooms. Furthermore, it conveys information about upper upscale and hotels. Moreover, it compares between room and other. Some elements are maximum while others are minimum. To conclude, the image is about accumulated growth. The image gives information about heat energy. The primary feature of the image is space. Firstly, energy reflected of atmosphere. The image gives information about heat energy radiated into space. The primary feature of the image is energy reflected of atmosphere. Firstly, it shows data about heat trapped by greenhouse gases. Furthermore, it conveys information about extra carbon dioxide from building fossil fuels. Moreover, it compares between heat and sun. To conclude, the picture is about felling of trees that absorb carbon dioxide. The image gives information about US cigarette. The image gives information about US cigarette price. The primary feature of the image is consumption. Firstly, it shows data about billions of packs per year. Furthermore, it conveys information about price and pack. Moreover, it compares between year 1970. The image gives information about US cigarette price. The primary feature of the image is consumption. Firstly, it shows data about billions of packs per year. Furthermore, it conveys information about price and pack. Moreover, it compares between year 1970 and 1972. The highest element is 31 and the lowest element is 15. To conclude, the picture is about average retail price.
I think with our linguistic training, we are also get all this invisible training to be authorities, to be the people who know. It is part of that process that you come out as a world authority on your chosen subject. But when we move into working with communities, we have to recognize that communities have to be the authority in their language. Actually, a woman in the class I'm teaching at Sydney at the moment, a career woman, expressed this very nicely. Although she was talking about something else, she was distinguishing expertise from authority. And certain linguists, because of our training, we do. We have expertise in certain very narrow areas of language. But we don't have the authority over what to do with that knowledge or what to do with our knowledge that the community produces. I guess for me, the bottom line is languages are lost because of the dominance of one people over another. That's not rocket science. That's not hard that to work out. But then what that means is in working with language revival, we continue to hold the authority. We actually haven't done anything towards undoing how languages are lost in the first place. So in a sense, the languages are still lost if the authority is still lost.
Linguistic training was the main topic of the lecture. Firstly, the speaker told about word of authority. He further discussed about working with communities. Furthermore, he explained about distinguish expertise from authority. Additionally, he highlighted information about language and knowledge. Moreover, he presented information about dominance of people. Towards the end, the speaker provided details about languages are lost. In conclusion, the speaker focused on lost authority.
What do you call the strap that circles a person in a car or an airplane?
Seat boundary line.
What do you use to test the body temperature?
A thermometer.
What is the force that draws objects toward a planet's center?
Gravitational force. Gravity.
What do you call students in universities who have not yet graduated?
Graduate students.
What is the job title for someone who makes meals in a restaurant?
Cook, waiter, chef, cook, waiter.
What are the first three letters of the English alphabet?
A B C. ABC.
Do you know who Emery Levins is? Nobody. Emery Levins is an unusual character. He's something of a polymath. Just say he has varied sort of knowledge across a wide range of fields. He's not an academic. He actually has a consulting company which he runs until recently out of his home in Colorado. He lives beside snowmass in a house built into the side of a mountain that has no furnace. For about 30 years, he was kind of an iconic plastic oddball genius, thinking of ways to save energy, thinking of ways to solve problems using technology that already exists. And he's demonstrated several of them. He also offers he's something that he is such an oddball that people tend to think he's kind of crazy. Anyway, Elizabeth Colbert went to spend some time with Emery Levins, and so he has written this piece called Mr. Green.
The earliest writers on politics, and I'm thinking of Plato and Aristotle here, felt free to draw insights from all areas of human knowledge, unlike modern academic writers who tend to put things into smaller and smaller compartments or focus more closely on one area of inquiry. For example, Plato would examine a whole political system and the philosophy that underlies it, whereas modern writers on politics might concentrate on one particular institution in that system, the House of Lords in England, or on voting patterns within a country. With this focus, the bigger questions that the ancients dealt with, what is the best form of government, or what is justice, tend to get left behind. Many writers on politics these days are university-based, and so have to have specialised interests. And while they may make new and interesting discoveries in their special field, it is at the loss of a broader perspective, not to mention the loss of a general audience or readership. In the 19th century, there were still writers who used the same freedom of inquiry as the ancients, and are all the more readable and relevant because of it.
Interesting sound. I would have guessed a Wild West performer was practicing with a bullwhip while also vacuuming. But no, that sound is apparently produced by the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. Since 2000, researchers at Finland's Aalto University have been collecting audio as part of what's called the Auroral Acoustics Project. Folk tales had long held that the lights also produce odd sounds, but the claims were hard to prove, and some researchers thought that any noises produced by the energetic particles that cause the light show would be far too high in the sky to be heard on the ground. But the latest results indicate that at least some sounds are produced very close to the ground. A setup of 3 ground-based microphones allowed researchers to estimate that the sounds occur perhaps just 70 meters up. The results were just presented at the International Congress on Sound and Vibration in Vilnius, Lithuania. More information about the sounds of the Northern Lights could lead to a more complete understanding of the phenomenon. So if you see an aurora, keep your ears open.
To begin with, you should be standing in the main floor of the British Library. British Library situated in the Euston Road next to some pipe crustacean press, in the foyer to the left of the information desk. It was a large white staircase. Follow this up towards the gallery at the top of the stairs. Pause and look to your left for attention. This is Robert Cotton, born in 1570 and died in 1631. Cotton was a member of Parliament, but he's mainly known as a great antiquarian collector of manuscripts. It is the Covenant we have a great depth in the survival of many English manuscripts. The Earth is warming. Almost all the Arctic summer ice may have melted by the end of the century, claims the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. The upside: access to an estimated quarter of the world's oil and gas resources and the opening of the fabled Northwest Passage. The downside: the Arctic wilderness is lost as neighboring countries, Denmark and Greenland, Russia, Canada, Norway, and the United States all race to share in this bounty.
Long-term exposure to noise can lead to loss of hearing. The relative loudness of sounds is measured in decibels. Just to give you an idea of what this means, the sound of a whisper is 30 decibels, while a normal conversation is 60 decibels. The noise a vacuum cleaner makes is around 85 decibels. The danger zone, the risk of injury, begins at around 90. Continual exposure to sounds above 90 decibels can damage your hearing. Loud noises, especially when they come at you every day, all this noise can damage the delicate hair cells in your inner ear. Lots of everyday noises are bad for us in the long run. For example, a car horn sounds at around 100 decibels. A rock band at close range is 125 decibels. A jet engine at close range is one of the worst culprits at an ear-busting 140 decibels. The first thing to go is your high-frequency hearing, where you detect the consonant sounds in words. That's why a person with hearing loss can hear voices, but has trouble understanding what's being said.
Signs advertising business premises have been around for thousands of years and were used in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome to attract customers. And they often used symbols to illustrate what kind of business it was. For example, bushes or branches of ivy meant the place was a tavern. Both of these, the tavern and its sign, were introduced into Britain by the Romans in the first half of the 1st century AD. In Europe in the Middle Ages, signs became more common. Then, in the 14th century, English merchants were obliged to have them outside their shops. However, the fashion was to have large swinging signs hung from a strut sticking out of the wall, and many public houses still have such signs. But so many accidents occurred, mostly involving people on horseback, that in the 17th century a law was brought in, requiring shopkeepers to mount their signs flat against the wall of the premises, where they could do no harm.
Most, if not all, young men and women have dreams of the future, which include themselves, their families, and possibly their country. At one time or another, they evaluate and criticize their own society, and think of the changes they would like to make. For most people, however, the biggest contribution they can make to their society's development and change is through the careers they will follow, rather than through direct political action. For the lucky few, their careers will be interesting as well as allowing them to make a measurable contribution to the growth of their country. This is why it is important to know something about the career aspirations of young people and the reasons for their interest in these ideal careers. At the same time, it is equally important to consider whether their aspirations are
Scientists distinguish two basic ways in which we receive information from the outside world through the sense of touch: active and passive, or, to put it more simply, touching and being touched. Being touched, or passive tactile awareness, includes sensing external pressure and temperature acting on parts of the body, and this gives us clues as to the nature of our environment. Active touching is when we explore our surroundings with our hands, feet, mouth, and so on. Because it's difficult to guess what some objects are really like with the eyes alone, for example, their weight, hardness or softness, roughness or smoothness, etc., touching them gives us a much fuller understanding of the objects around us. Yet, how touch works is very complex and
City planners and citizens alike frequently push for better public transportation. They argue that it can lessen traffic and reduce emissions from cars. Now there's a new reason to be gung-ho about public transit. It helps make people skinnier. That's according to a study published in the August issue of the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. Researchers surveyed communities in Charlotte, North Carolina. One survey was done before the city had finished building a new light rail system, and the second was done from 12 to 18 months after the rail's completion. They asked about the residents' level of physical activity, body mass, and use of public transportation before and after the light rail. Turns out that people who started using light rail to commute had a significant average weight loss over that time, equivalent to about 6.5 pounds for a 5'5" person. The users were also 81% less likely to become obese over the timescale surveyed. The researchers say that an environment based on mass transit influences health because rail users get exercise walking to and from stops. And since illness is costly, here's another way public transit saves money.
The new Yankee Stadium has opened in the Bronx. I went to a game Saturday, and it's a much friendlier place for anyone trying to eat healthfully and maintain some environmental awareness. When I entered the park, I stopped at the produce stand, and bought a couple of fresh pears. Later I went to the noodle bowl stand where for $8.50 I got a bowl of noodles, veggies, and tofu. Tofu at the ballpark. The snack was listed on the menu board at 240 calories. All the food choices have calorie counts posted now, so you can avoid or still indulge in the almost 1,100 calorie Moe's Home Wrecker Burrito at La Esquina Latina. I also had a caramel apple, which as junk food goes, is still pretty good. Every few yards you find a trio of disposal cans for regular trash, plastic, and compost, which you may actually have items for with a produce stand on site, and which may eventually foster a garden in which more fresh vegetables take root for the home team.
Physicists at the Brookhaven National Laboratory have been able to send information ahead of particle beams racing at nearly the speed of light. And the message to the beams is, get in line. This technique has been developed at other labs but never used before with particle beams traveling in discrete bunches. These bunches are important in recreating that singular moment, the Big Bang. In these experiments, there are two different sets of ions, electrically charged particles, zooming towards each other around a 2.4-mile track. They collide into one another to recreate conditions that provide info about the Big Bang, but the ions spread out as they move, and this means there are fewer collisions. In a technique called stochastic cooling, scientists first measure fluctuations in the beams of ions. Then they send signals even faster than these particles to devices up ahead that can kick those particles back into shape. Researchers say this technique allows them to create these collisions much more frequently and cheaply than other methods. And so they can get more and better data about what our universe might have been like just after it came into existence.
Calculations may not be needed in this examination.
Academic journals are usually edited by subject specialists.
The paper has the potential to transform life science. The students will meet their new teachers after the summer vacation.